In the quiet hush of the evening, as the world outside softens into shadow, we turn our gaze back in time. Not with the hurried pace of history, but with the gentle, slow rhythm of a life deeply lived. Allow your breath to deepen and your thoughts to settle as we begin a journey into the mind that saw the entire world as a wondrous puzzle, the life of Leonardo da Vinci. Close your eyes and imagine the soft golden light of the Tuscan countryside over half a millennium ago. It is a world still lit by the flame of a candle and cooled by the gentle currents of nature. We drift to the year 1452, to a small, unassuming village known simply as Vinci, nestled among rolling hills and the silver-green whisper of olive groves. It is here, in this peaceful, rustic setting, that our story begins. The boy, Leonardo, was born outside the strict societal bounds of his era, the illegitimate son of a wealthy Florentine notary. In the quiet hush of the evening, this unusual beginning softens into shadow. Certain obstacles later in life back in time, seems to have granted him a quiet, not with the hurried pace of history, an opportunity to wander and observe the world without the immediate, heavy expectation of a fixed and your thoughts to settle. As we begin a journey into the mind that saw the entire world letting in squares of that soft, the life Tuscan light of Leonardo da Vinci. Feel the coolness of the rough Close your eyes beneath his and imagine the soft golden light. The sounds of the Tuscan countryside were not the clamour of a city workshop. It is a world still lit by the flame of a candle, the distant call of a shepherd, by the gentle currents of nature. Of the nearby we drift to the year 1452, winding its way to a small, unassuming village known simply as Vinci, was perhaps nestled among rolling most hills, profound teacher, and the silver-green whisper rich in olive groves, the intricate veining of a single peaceful, rustic tireless flight of a dragonfly begins. The way light played tricks on the Leonardo as clouds was born outside the strict societal bounds of his era. The illegitimate son of a wealthy Florentine notary and a local peasant woman. This unusual beginning, while presenting certain rigorous classical education, seems to have granted him a quiet, early freedom. Instead, his education was rooted in direct experience and observe the world without the immediate curiosity. Heavy expectation. He learned to write a unique, professional script. A silent, personal language stone that flowed from right to left, its windows letting in squares of that choice to slow down his thoughts, to make his inner coolness of the rough immediately accessible beneath his small feet. It is the rhythmic scratching of his earliest days were not the clamour of a city workshop, but the gentle bleating of sheep. Imagine him call of a shepherd and the murmur of the nearby Arno River winding its way toward the sea. He would study the eddies. The atmosphere of Vinci itself was perhaps his first and most profound teacher, attempting to understand the logic of its fluid, the intricate veining of a single leaf, see a bird, the tireless flight of a dragonfly, dissect the mechanism of its wing, tricks on the landscape his small as clouds drifted overhead, with sketches of feathers, tendons, and elemental beauty. This and the early and unhurried process of observation with an almost formed the bedrock of his genius. He did not receive the rigorous classical education expected of a notary son. In the 1460s, his education was rooted in direct experience and the early insatiable curiosity. Florence was a city of stone and ambition, script, a place where the scent of new paint that flowed with the dust of old manuscripts, perhaps a subconscious choice to slow down far more stimulating, to make his inner world far louder, less immediately than the quiet hills of his childhood. It is the Leonardo entered it with the same calm, penetrating steady rustle in the quiet. His father recognized the boy's exceptional skill him with a charcoal on his solitary walk, and at around the age of 14, Leonardo was formally apprenticed. He would study the Andrea del Verrocchio, one of the most respected masters in Florence. Submerged stone, the workshop of Verrocchio was a hive of its diverse activity. He wouldn't simply see a bird take sculpture, he would dissect the mechanism of its wing, filling his small notebooks. Even then, the soft clinking of a hammer on metal, tendons, the low, steady heat of the furnace, this early, unhurried process of observation, hanging gently in the air, the focused silence when he was broken only by quiet. His father took him into his own household. It was here, later, surrounded by the greatest materials and minds of the age, the dazzling epicenter of the early Renaissance began to Florence was a city of stone. He was a natural, a place where the rare combination of intellectual rigor of old and physical grace. Historical accounts suggest he was a man of remarkable beauty and charm, than the quiet hills, an accomplished musician who could improvise on the lira da braccio, calm and possessed a calm, magnetic presence. His father recognized the boy's exceptional skill in this supportive environment. And at around the age of 14, slowly refined Leonardo was formally apprenticed. He learned the painstaking process of grinding pigments, one of the most respected masters in mastering the complex geometry. The workshop of Verrocchio was a hive of diverse activity, emphasized a meticulous, almost scientific goldsmithing and casting, a perfect foundation. Imagine the sensory environment. The sound of his earliest credited contributions, the low, steady heat of the furnace, detail the tang of linseed oil and turpentine, the banging gently in the air, offers a quiet silence of the broken only by quiet instruction. Leonardo was tasked with painting one of the greatest materials, and while the rest of the work adheres to the master's sharp, prodigious talents, began Leonardo's angel. He was a natural. The figure is infused with a rare combination of intellectual rigor, its face turned with a sense of wistful, historical accounts suggest he was a man of remarkable beauty and charm, so softly an accomplished musician who could improvise on the lira da braccio and possessed a calm, magnetic presence that drew people in. It was in this supportive environment, the young man slowly refined his craft. But in the gentle, he learned the painstaking process of grinding pigments, preparing panels for paint, and mastering the complex geometry required for perspective. In 1478, Verrocchio's style, though the work emphasized a meticulous, almost scientific marked by a quiet, a perfect foundation for a mind endless filling like of sketchbooks, as he turned his Florentine experience contributions deep. A small, subtle detail within Verrocchio's large work, in the hills of the baptism of Christ, was now being translated onto canvas of the artist he would become. With an almost Leonardo was tasked with painting one of the kneeling angels. Leonardo was not content while the rest of the work adheres to the master's in a world full of traditional lines. His curiosity stretched far beyond the confines of the bottega. The figure is infused with a new, not just the technical manuals of art, but works of mathematics, geometry, and engineering. His technique, he began to see the canvas so softly not just as a space for devotion or decoration, be termed, but as a window onto the structure of the cosmos. Was already he was drawn shape to the mechanics of techniques that rendered the world not in sharp and the distinct edges. This deep-seated inquiry, often leading him away from the easel for long periods, would become the defining feature. He received his first independent commission. It was a sign that the boy who studied the river's flow lost. These years were marked by a quiet, dedicated practice, an endless filling of sketchbooks order as he turned his Florentine experience into deep, as the years in Florence began to feel less like a starting point in the hills and more like a constraint, was now being translated the desire for a new environment, paper, a new with an almost unsettling fidelity take hold. But the quiet hum of his ambition was growing, poised to take in a world full of them. The first act of his curiosity stretched far beyond the confines of observation and craft. He was redrawing to a close not just the technical manuals of Florence of the late works of mathematics, while a cradle of art and engineering was also a hotbed of intense competition. He began to see the canvas and political not just as a space for devotion, for a mind as boundless as Leonardo, but as a window onto the structure of the circles. Were starting to feel less like a nurturing to the mechanics of things, and more like a gilded to the cage. How and the why. He was more than just a deep-seated inquiry, often leading him in the early 1480s. For long periods, Leonardo made a bold become the defining feature of his life. It was a sign bags and that the boy who studied the wealthy, powerful city of Milan was still working to offer his services to its ruler, patiently, Duke Ludovico's attempting to map the hidden order. This wasn't just a change of scenery. It was Leonardo's in Florence began to feel shadow of less like a starting point the world and more like a constraint master. The desire for a new environment, long road to Milan, challenge, the rhythmic began to gently take hold. The dust, the quiet hum of his ambition was growing, poised when he arrived around 1482, the first act of his life. He didn't just show up with a portfolio apprenticeship in observation and craft. He presented the Duke with one of the most incredible job applications in history. This letter, which we still have today, barely mentioned his art. Instead, it was a detailed catalogue of his skills as a military engineer. He wrote, "I can construct bridges very light and strong. I have methods for destroying every fortress. I can make cannons, mortars, and light ordnance of very useful and beautiful shapes." It was a stunning display of practical and destructive genius. Only at the very end, almost as an afterthought, did he add, "Also in painting, I can do everything possible as well as any other, whoever he may be." Sforza, a ruler deeply concerned with both warfare and his city's prestige, was utterly captivated. Leonardo was hired, and though he started as a court artist, his role quickly expanded. The nearly 2 decades he spent in Milan would become the most productive and creatively explosive period of his entire life. Here, under the Duke's patronage, he finally had the freedom and the resources to let his scientific curiosity run wild alongside his artistic pursuits. Picture his workshop in Milan, a space filled with the beautiful chaos of a restless intellect. Drawings are everywhere. There are studies for a colossal bronze horse, designs for elaborate stage mechanics, detailed anatomical sketches of muscles and bone, and complex plans for canals and water systems. The constant soft scratching of his pen on paper is the soundtrack to this era of relentless discovery. His duties were incredibly varied. One day he might be designing dazzling, illusion-filled sets for a court festival, using his mechanical knowledge to make magic happen on stage. The next, he'd be lost in the monumental challenge of creating a giant equestrian statue of Francesco Sforza, the Duke's father. This statue, which was never finished, would have been the largest bronze horse ever cast. The project consumed years of his life and filled countless notebook pages with studies of equine anatomy and complex casting techniques. It was during this time that his famous notebooks truly began to blossom. They became the magnificent, sprawling record of his mind that we treasure today. He dissected human bodies, not for medical purposes, but to understand, as an artist, what lay beneath the skin, and to seek, as a philosopher, the very seat of the soul. He studied optics, trying to understand how the eye sees and how light creates shadow, which formed the scientific basis for his revolutionary sfumato painting technique. He was fascinated by the power of water, designing canals, locks, and complex hydraulic systems. For Leonardo, art and science weren't separate disciplines. They were intertwined, 2 sides of the same coin. Science was the search for truth, and art was the beautiful expression of that truth. And nowhere is this fusion more evident than in the 2 masterpieces he created in Milan. First, The Last Supper. Painted on the wall of a monastery dining hall, this isn't just a religious scene. It's a masterpiece of psychological drama. Leonardo chose the most electric moment of the story, when Christ says, "One of you shall betray me." He freezes time, capturing the wave of shock, denial, and anger that crashes over the apostles. He uses perfect mathematical perspective to draw our eyes directly to Christ, placing him at the calm, geometric, and emotional center of the storm. But, in a classic Leonardo move, he experimented. Instead of using the time-tested fresco technique on wet plaster, he painted with tempera and oil on a dry wall. He wanted the ability to work slowly and add fine detail, but the experiment was a catastrophe. The paint began to flake and decay almost as soon as he finished. The tragic fragility of this masterpiece is a poignant reminder of Leonardo's genius, his occasional impatience, and his relentless drive for innovation, even when it failed. Then there is the stunning portrait, The Lady with an Ermine. Believed to be Sforza's mistress, Cecilia Gallerani, this painting broke all the rules. Instead of a stiff, formal profile, Leonardo captures a moment of life. Cecilia is turned as if in mid-thought, her intelligent eyes looking at something just beyond our view. Her hand elegantly rests on an ermine, an animal rendered with an anatomist's precision. It's a painting that feels alive, breathing and thinking. But the winds of politics are ever-changing. As the 15th century came to a close, French armies invaded Milan in 1499. Ludovico Sforza was overthrown, and Leonardo, after nearly 20 years of loyal service, was suddenly without a patron. In a heartbreaking end to his Milanese chapter, his massive clay model for the Sforza horse was reportedly used for target practice by the invading French soldiers, a tragic symbol of how easily grand ambitions can be turned to dust. With his typical quiet observation, Leonardo left the city that had been his home. After brief stops in Mantua and Venice, the pull of his home region became too strong to ignore. In the year 1500, Leonardo da Vinci, now a celebrated master whose fame had spread across Italy, returned to Florence. He had left as a promising artist. He returned as a true Renaissance man, a uomo universale, whose legend was just beginning. When Leonardo returned to Florence in 1500, he wasn't a humbled exile. At 48, he was a celebrity, a celebrated intellectual at the peak of his powers. The city welcomed him, offering him work and a place to stay at the convent of Santissima Annunziata. These years in Florence were less frantic than his time at the Sforza court, giving him the space to dive deeper into his scientific studies while still taking on monumental commissions. It was here that he truly cemented his reputation as a master painter, a reputation built on profound depth, not sheer volume. Imagine his studio. It's a place of quiet, focused intensity. The only sounds are the scrape of chalk on a panel and the soft turning of pages in his ever-present notebooks. Sunlight streams through a high window, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air, landing on a half-finished canvas. The air is still, thick with the scent of dried oils and aging parchment. During this time, he was commissioned to paint the Battle of Anghiari, a massive fresco for the Palazzo Vecchio. This project put him in direct competition with a fierce young rival, Michelangelo, who was hired to paint the opposite wall. But Leonardo's vision for the battle wasn't about glorious victory. His sketches show a terrifying, tangled whirlpool of combat, men and horses locked in a snarling struggle, a study of rage and fear under extreme pressure. True to form, he experimented with a new, slow-drying, oil-based medium. And once again, the experiment was a catastrophe. The fresco began to melt and run down the wall before it was even finished, a sad echo of what happened to The Last Supper. The physical painting was lost, but its powerful design survived through copies made by his students, a testament to his unique vision of human conflict. Yet this era is defined most profoundly by a single, small portrait, a work that has become the quiet, magnetic center of the Western art world, the Mona Lisa. Believed to be Lisa Gherardini, the wife of a silk merchant, her identity is less important than the technique Leonardo used to create her. He worked on this small poplar panel, slowly, deliberately over many years, never considering it truly finished. He employed his sfumato technique to its absolute peak. Look closely at the corners of her mouth and eyes. They are so subtly blended, so smoky, that you can't tell where the light ends and the shadow begins. This gentle uncertainty creates that famous, elusive smile, a smile that seems to appear and dissolve as you look at it, like a cloud passing over the sun. The background is just as crucial to the painting's tranquil mood. It's a misty, fantastical landscape that recedes into a dreamlike distance. Leonardo applied a varnish with a high oil content, creating a deep, veiled glow that seems to come from within the sitter herself, giving the entire work an atmosphere of profound inner peace. She sits in a calm, stable pyramid shape, her hands gently crossed, a posture of quiet confidence. This painting was a work of pure, distilled serenity, and Leonardo would keep it with him for the rest of his life, a treasured companion on all his travels. While painting this masterpiece, he was also making his most significant advances in anatomy. He completed his groundbreaking series of anatomical drawings, including the famous study of a fetus in the womb and incredibly detailed cross-sections of the heart and brain. These diagrams are miracles of clarity, combining artistic skill with scientific insight that wouldn't be surpassed for another 200 years. It's in his thousands of pages of notebooks that we see the true breadth of his genius. One page might have a design for a flying machine, the next a calculation for the center of gravity, and then a philosophical thought on the nature of water or the futility of war. He saw no dividing line between a beating heart, the flight of a bird, or the formation of a rock. For Leonardo, it was all one unified system. In 1506, he was invited back to Milan by the French governor. This later Milanese period was a time of deep reflection. His painting output slowed considerably. He focused on his final great scientific explorations, the nature of water, the formation of mountains, and the study of light and shadow. This resulted in enigmatic, swirling works like St. John the Baptist, where figures emerge from a soft, shadowed veil as if from a waking dream. He had learned to carry the quiet stillness of his curiosity with him, turning his mind into an island of peaceful inquiry. In 1513, Leonardo left for Rome. He was now in his early 60s, and his time there was more focused on his scientific studies than on art. The brilliant young Raphael was the star of the Roman art scene, and Leonardo was more interested in grinding lenses and organizing his notes than competing for commissions. Imagine his small Roman study, the sun setting softly, casting long shadows over stacks of paper. His hand, which had rendered life with such fluid ease, was now showing signs of strain, possibly from a stroke, making it difficult to paint or draw. His final journey began in 1517. King Francis I of France, a great admirer, invited him to his court. He gave Leonardo a title, a handsome stipend, and the gentle gift of time and peace. Leonardo was housed in the charming manor of Clos-Lucé, near the king's residence. Here, he wasn't required to produce anything. His only job was to talk with the king, share his immense knowledge, and organize his life's work. The Mona Lisa was with him, sitting nearby as he catalogued his life's journey. Leonardo da Vinci passed away peacefully at Clos-Lucé on May 2, 1519, at the age of 67. Legend says he died in the arms of the king, a final gesture of respect from a world that was only just beginning to grasp the immensity of the man it had lost. He left his notes, drawings, and tools to his devoted student Francesco Melzi, ensuring his intellectual legacy would be preserved. The noise of his life, the patrons, the wars, the failures, has long since faded. What remains is the calm, rhythmic scratching of his quill on parchment, a silent invitation to observe the world not with hurried anxiety, but with profound, restful curiosity. He is the ultimate universal man, not because he did many things, but because he saw one truth uniting all things. The truth he sought was always in the gentle transition, the quiet blending, the place where light and shadow meet. His legacy is an invitation to explore the world with a mind that is open and deeply, peacefully at rest. Thank you for joining me on this journey. If you enjoyed this glimpse into Leonardo's world, please consider liking this video and subscribing for more stories from art history.